Welcome to another edition of the Business Buzz. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. We have a very timely and noteworthy guest, Paul Mathews from the Birch Group. He's going to talk, among other things, about landing that perfect job, even in a difficult economy, as well as strategic planning and other issues. Paul, welcome to the Business Buzz.
Thanks, Jeff.
So before we get into some of the later subject matter, let's talk a little bit about the Birch Group, what you do and what your expertise is, what you bring to the table.
Okay. Yeah, the Birch Group has been around quite a while and has quite a suite of products. We do some strategic planning, and then beyond that, and more relating to the topic today, I think, is we do a lot of work with talent optimization, finding the right people in the right job at the right time. Just getting the most out of your folks, realignment of responsibilities and skills and qualities toward better jobs within the organization as opposed to being laid off, and restructuring, succession planning, things like that. A lot of it in and around talent optimization, talent acquisition, and then we do a lot of transition work for individuals that are in between jobs if they got laid off or are going through outplacement. And they want a career coach, they'll hire us.
Mm-hmm. Now, even in a difficult economy, I would imagine that it's sometimes a task for companies to find good people. Is that still the case, even in a tough economy?
Even in a tough economy today, yes. And there's just so many avenues out there. I mean, today there's 40,000 job boards. Tomorrow there's going to be 40,000 job boards, but not the same 40,000. And there's pools of people in multiple places, and there's a lot of noise. It's a lot of static. It's a lot of chaos. And so manipulating through all that and getting to the right place where the right people are, utilizing newer technologies and newer methodologies. It's a challenge, but we're getting there. We're learning.
Mm-hmm. Now, for today's job searcher, those people that are either employed or unemployed now looking for a job, either a step up or just a step in, I would imagine negotiating all those job boards is a whole different ball of wax than it was 10 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the same thing on that side, too. There is a lot of noise, a lot of places to go, a lot of different things to do. And, people left to their own devices end up sitting behind their computer. There's just so much technology out there right now with the job boards and the social networks, and you can just a lot of jobs you can find on these things. Some of them real, some of them not. Some of them are just trolling. Some of them are just resume building. Some of them are just data warehouses. It's stressful and it's difficult to manipulate your way through all of that, especially when you're home alone. On your home computer in your basement, it's tough. It's better to be out there and to talk to people, and you need to make the computer in your home office part of your campaign or part of your transition, but a lot of it needs to be outside of the home.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get outside the home? I think, for someone like myself, I would go stir crazy behind, four walls eventually. I'd want to get out and talk to people. How do you make that happen?
Yeah, well, it's we'll take you for an example. If you did find yourself unemployed, I would almost guarantee the first thing you're going to do is turn on your computer.
Yes.
And there's so much information there that you might not turn it off. You'll go to bed, you'll get up, and you do the same thing, and the next thing you know, 3 weeks have gone by, and you've been behind your computer, and you don't really have that sensation or that feeling of going stir crazy. You have a sensation and a feeling of frustration and a lack of response and aloneness. So you need that. You do need to step out of the house, and there's meetings at libraries now. There's meetings at town halls. A lot of programs out there for people that are looking for work. The state of Connecticut is doing a good job with some of their programs in unemployment, and there's things to go there. And, go to these places, learn what you can learn, meet who you can meet, talk about, your value and some of the things that you're looking for in a target company, so that people can start getting some ideas about who you might be able to meet. And, just make the most out of every relationship that you can make, over the course of however long it's going to take.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something that's interesting to me, and that is targeting a company. How important is that, and how effective is that in terms of having maybe 2 or 3 companies that you're actually strategically targeting? Does that make sense?
It's critical, but 2 or 3 doesn't make sense. It's not enough. But 10, 15, 20 companies that you want to go work for, establish them as targets. Do your research. We don't have to go to the library anymore to figure out if we know somebody in the companies. That is easy research on the computer. Figure out who you know, what your best way in is, and get to know those people. Go to those companies, have meetings, have coffee, smell their carpets, see what their parking lot's like in it. Start getting a feel for it. On my way over here, Bob Wolf, who's 91 years old and a sportscaster, and he just wrote a book. And he was, it's just a coincidence, but he was talking about what it takes to get a job now in broadcasting. And he was just saying exactly that. You need to go out of the house. You need to meet people that are in the business. You need to go to them with an idea and communicate that idea so that you're part of it. And at some point, if you're any good and you have a good idea, they'll pick you up. That's for broadcasting. And I was thinking as I finished listening in the parking lot. I was a little late because I was listening to the end of that. It's very similar to what anybody would do. So it's not just for broadcasting. It's go there with an idea. Some people think you got to go there with solutions to their problems. If you were interviewing somebody and if you were interviewing me and I came in and said, well, you've got this wrong and that wrong and I can fix these things. First, you need to do this. Would you like me very much?
Something that's so funny and interesting that you said that, because when I finished my MBA program and I was targeting a company and I had that exact same strategy, I remember a professor was telling me that, that sounds really great, and something to the effect, and then when I kicked you out the door, it was so funny because that was, even if you read books that told you about find a problem, he goes, who are you to tell them what kind of problem they have? And come up with ideas, yes, but problems could be insulting, couldn't it?
Oh, sure. And I guess I won't say that particular professor was brilliant, but he sounds like he was. And
he was.
And I happen to agree with him. It's we do need to go there with ideas and creativity. You need to go there with your due diligence hat on. You're there to gather information as well, almost like a journalist. And in the end, you're there to uncover challenges. It's not always a problem. Sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's a new product. Sometimes it's a different direction. It could be anything. And prove that you can make a positive contribution into those areas of challenge. But don't make those contributions yet. For one thing, they don't want to hear it from you yet. And the second thing is, why would you? They're not paying you yet. So it costs money for us to solve their problems.
Interesting. Now, the whole mental framework about looking for a job, how do you help people not get completely despaired, discouraged, disillusioned with the job search and basically curl up in a ball?
Yeah, I expose them to what my life really is, and it just picks people up. It is a hard one, and there is that out there, and so I will use this forum to say that when we lay people off and we let them go, and we're not giving them the proper support away from the company, that there is the despair and the depression and the illness and the broken marriage and the foreclosure notice, and I think we need to be better at letting people go, better at firing, better at downsizing, better at offshoring and outplacement. Outsourcing. But it's to answer your question. You try to keep the highs low and the lows high. Frankly, it's too easy to get too excited about a good event very early on in a relationship. The first date, kind of thing, and you start thinking about marriage. That happens in a career campaign, and so as a coach, very consciously and diligently work on keeping the lows high and the highs low.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I have a individual I know that went through an interview process. They all said, "Oh yeah, great," and he came out thinking he had the job. That can happen. People can tell you, "Yeah, great, you'd fit in here perfectly," and whatever. That doesn't mean you're going to get the job. He kind of quit job searching for a while and thought he was going to do it. He hasn't heard from them in 3 weeks.
Right. So, and he might have done something wrong. He might have not sent a thank you. He might have sent a thank you note with a misspelling in it. maybe the CEO's son decided he wanted a job. There's so
There's
many
a lot
things
of
that could
factors.
happen.
So just
yeah.
because someone says, gee, you're doing great, or hey, it was fantastic, you'd fit in here perfectly, doesn't mean you have the job.
No, and it doesn't mean you should stop looking. And even if they said, here's your offer, and they give it to you, you haven't started yet. It's, you need to be looking at the offer, negotiating it, and seeing where there's some gaps in needs and wants and what they're offering, so that you can ask some good questions. But you don't have a start date yet.
No.
And you really should continue to look. Offers get pulled away, they get rescinded, things change. I have a horrible story that I can. It's about 2 years old now, but we had a client that we were working with, and he pretty senior level, landed a great job at a company that's very tempting to mention right now, but I won't, in Minneapolis, and he took his kids out of school, and they sold their house, and they packed the truck, and they told everybody, and they went to Minneapolis, and when he got there, this company, and we know the company, had lost some funding. They lost some, there was a private equity group that was investing at that time, held back on some funds, and they turned the truck around.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
After doing all that?
Yeah. And so
Talk about depressing. He must have been highly discouraged.
He was. He was. I actually, I didn't hear from him for a long time, despite our efforts. I have recently reconnected to him, and he's doing well, and he landed on his feet. And he told me the hardest thing was actually coming back home to his family and having to tell them. Not, that day when he got to the office and, they said, sorry, we don't actually have a desk for you here. It was actually once he got back home and he had to communicate or try to communicate what had happened.
Try, I think, is the operative word. My God, that sounds horrifically bad. You mentioned networking groups, and I always thought that those networking groups for jobs, aren't there most of the people there don't have jobs, so how can it be an effective way of networking?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Some of those groups that have, primarily unemployed individuals or underemployed individuals, they're not experts at helping each other, but each of them has their own little Rolodex. And when these groups of people are getting together, I think it's critical to get some expertise into the room that can make heads or tails out of the conversations.
Oh, to have almost like a mediator to kind of get things going.
Yeah, mediator, moderator, facilitator, something like that. We do a lot of that. It sounds like a pitch, but it's critical. And so, there's one type of networking group that I do that is, nobody leaves the room without 2 new leads, contacts, or ideas, and that's it. And they're all unemployed. So we sit around in a horseshoe, and I sit in the middle, and we just go around and we talk until everybody has 2 new leads, contacts, and ideas, and the door stays locked until we're done. And sometimes it takes an hour, and sometimes it takes 4 hours.
But at least you've left with some tangible results.
And somebody in that, if there's 15 people in that room, one of them will walk away with a job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not that night, but it's before the next meeting, one of those people will have a job.
That's
from
fantastic.
a lead, contact, or idea that came out of that group. Yeah.
How about employers? What kind of skills are employers looking for, do you find? Is it changed, or have they always been the same?
Well, I would say the biggest area of change is, and it's not really a skill, it's more of a quality. But if you think about 15 years ago when we were looking for a job, if I was presenting my resume to somebody, and I'd stayed at one company for 10 years, then I stayed at my next company for 7 years, and I was going into my 3rd company. Yeah, I had to explain that, why I jumped around so much. It was 10 and 7 years, which is far longer than average these days.
Yes.
But I felt like I needed to explain that. And then after that 3rd job, I started getting into the career coaching thing, and kind of felt a calling for that. And originally, and this is mid-90s, we would worry about talking points for individuals that had moved around. If they had 3 or 4 jobs in a 10-year period, we would have talking points around, what happened during those situations to